You're listening to Relatable with Stephanie Michelle, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michelle. Sorry for the technical difficulties and starting a little bit late. We are live. Sometimes these things happen. So here we go. Before we get started today, I want to give a shout out, actually just some love and protection for my parents, Sheila and Dwayne, my mom and my stepdad. We call him Papa D, in Florida because Irma is in their way and they are evacuating. And my mom was so cute. She called me this morning and said, honey, I'm going to try to catch your show, but we've got to evacuate. I'm like, Mom, evacuate. It's fine. We'll record it for you. But I hope everybody in the area gets out and is safe. And we continue to keep our friends in Texas that were in Harvey's way.
Hurricane Harvey.
Hurricane Harvey. I almost doubted that was the name for a second. In Texas, that they're still safe and the floods are going down. So shout out to those people and prayers as well. So today's show is really a recap of some of the things that we've learned about relating and connection from previous shows. And I thought it was time to slow down and do the show for two reasons. The first, a lot of what John Weiland said in his show on intimacy, a lot of the things that he said really left a little mark for me. I was like thinking about it. So he put this frame on what people might need based on their lean towards masculine or feminine energy. And some things came up for me in that. So I realized I have a lot of masculine traits. Like I could totally identify with the need for incentive and freedom and less burden. I spend a lot of my days in what I consider workhorse mode, where I'm just getting stuff done, really not appearing to really need anything at all. And then I isolate myself to refuel, to do it over and over again. So I'll, take time just out to just be quiet and rest, and then I'm just back into workhorse mode. Now, I suspect this must be confusing to people that I encountered because to think of me as having this masculine energy when my shell is feminine, it might come off kind of weird or like, what is she about? What motivates her? And let me assure you that I'm definitely feminine as well. My need for love and connection drives everything that I do. But somehow I treat that need as a luxury that only happens after my masculine needs are fulfilled. I'm sure my therapist friends are going to have a lot of fun with that statement, and I'll let you know what they say about it. But nevertheless, I don't consider myself in need of being fixed because of this. I consider myself very much a work in progress. I like the term WIP, work in progress. That's what I am. I think that's what most people are. But what's fascinating to me and what just gives me energy is to still find things to discover about myself. And that show really made me think, like, oh, yeah, I kind of operate in masculine energy quite a bit. I also like the idea of looking at masculine and feminine energy traits and see how those concepts apply to modern concepts of connection and relating. There's really no guidelines out there for what's happening in terms of how we're connecting and how we're not connecting and like what role tech is playing in it. The best thing that I've come up for as a guideline is a book that was wrote by a comedian, for God's sake. So the book is called Modern Romance, and it's by Aziz Ansari. He did a great job. He brought a bunch of sociologists into his research about, really what's happening in terms of how we connect when the phone's involved and, and how we, misunderstand what people are saying and don't take the time to really, work and sort that out. So I'm thinking about this question, what can we learn about our own actions through the perceptions of others when we filter it through the basis for masculine and feminine needs and desires? So as John mentioned on the show on intimacy, the masculine energy requires incentive or needs incentive and wants freedom and less burden. And the feminine energy needs connection, love, and feeling. And so as I mentioned, I clearly know that I have both masculine and feminine energy in me. And as we But yet we often talk about it as a gender-specific thing. And I'd like to really try hard not to do that today. And if we do, I'm sorry. You know, I'm a heterosexual woman. My guest, who we're going to get to in a minute, is a heterosexual man. And we might end up saying things that are more about, you know, our labels. But I'm encouraging everybody that's listening to just kind of concentrate on the characteristics and go, oh, I identify with that, or I don't identify with that. And it's really like these frames, I think, this masculine energy and feminine energy frame is really another way to discover motivation. Like, what's the motivation behind, like, what we do? And when we understand motivation, we get to those why questions. We start to really learn more about people, and then we understand better. So this is why I like, you know, thinking about this frame for today's show. And as I said earlier, there were two reasons why I wanted to slow down and do this show. And the second reason that I wanted to slow down and do this show is to bring on my guest. My guest is a really good friend of mine, and he is the kind of man that just shows up and offers to drive and does it on a consistent basis. And he's been here since day one for the shows and encouraging me, and I really appreciate that. And we have great conversations, and we get into some depth about things. And I thought, who better to slow down than George, you know, to have these conversations? And so you're going to learn about George in a second. But, you know, just keep in mind, so really the focus today is it's two friends talking about some big topics and just kind of sharing our thoughts around it. And either one of us have this all figured out. You know, we'll be the first to really say that. But the point of today's show is just showing that there's value and exploration, self-discovery, and just showing up and making time for the conversation, right?
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So that brings me to introducing my good friend, George Magdaleno. And I love saying your last name, by the way. I've never told you that. I just think it's a fun name. But George is recently divorced, father of one adorable son. And he works in sales and business development and is currently working in artificial intelligence, helping brands manage and position their identity online. He also has a political podcast, hence his shirt. He likes to talk politics. I don't so much, but he's good at it and knows quite a bit about it. But he has a political podcast called Res Publica Podcast, and I'll share the link, and I believe the link's going to be on the screen for listeners and viewers as well. And on this show, he takes the position of the conservative voice on the panel of three that includes a Berkeley-based progressive and a mainstream Democrat. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're trying to bring polite conversation back into the political sphere.
Right? Understanding, too, right?
Understanding and relating.
Yeah. Debating's not relating. I love
Debating is not relating
Debating
because
is
you
not
just
relating.
end up talking over the other person.
Yeah.
And relating is, you know, coming to a mutual agreement that you may have two diverse points of view, but you're looking at the same object, or
Yeah.
you're looking at the same dilemma.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So, George, you've watched the show before. Now you're sitting in the seat, and you know the first question that I ask every guest. And the first question is, you know, is there anything, we know what we're going to talk about,
Okay.
you know, connection and some of the things that John talked about on his show, because I know you and I have had some conversations about it. But before we get there, is there anything that you just want to clear out, that you just want to put out there to, like, put that aside so we can have this really rich conversation?
I think I kind of want the bookend to the shout out for the people in Florida. I called my best friend Marcos, who lives in Miami, and he's going to clear out his whole family, like 7 members of the family.
Yeah.
He's Cuban American, but his father lives in Cuba. So the task that he has today is to try to find his father somewhere on the island.
Oh.
Because the storm is tracking, it's going to go right through Puerto Rico, plow through the Dominican Republic, and then go north. And I think nothing brings America closer than a crisis. And we saw that with Harvey, where the thing that made me kind of like tear up is seeing all of these trucks pulling boats headed down the 10 and the 45, the two big interstates into Houston, that were headed to Houston to rescue people.
Yeah.
And then you see the images, positive images of people helping other people.
Yeah.
And the conversation we're going to get into today, the postmodernists tell us that gender is a social construction. So whether you're heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, in the end, you're people. You know, and relating is something that all people must do.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And yeah, I also teared up. I'm not gonna lie, I teared up a lot watching slowing down and watching the news about Houston, and you don't see people stopping to go, hey, what label are you, before I decide to help you. They just help. Like they help, they relate. We're in the same boat, literally. Let's do this. And I think that is the thread of life. Like, if we're not doing this well, what are we doing?
Exactly.
Like, it shouldn't take a crisis to bring that out in people.
Well, the crisis brings people together because a crisis diffuses the narcissism of small differences. And the narcissism of small differences is those little differences like, oh, I don't like that guy because he's got a stupid truck. Hurricane Harvey hits, hey, that stupid truck is towing a boat. It's going to save your grandma who's stuck on a roof. So hence that person no longer has a stupid truck. And that's the narcissism of small differences that I may be getting a little bit too political too early, but that Donald Trump exploited in the election. And this is why he's the president right now, because he really was able to drive a wedge between people and put them into two political camps. And he's done that throughout his term. We're only 6 months into his term, and it's never been this polarized. I mean, it is really bad.
I really don't want to go there.
We won't.
but I could say more on that, but I'm going to stop on that, because just like every other show and breaking news thing, that topic will not hijack this topic or the show.
I'll stop.
So my first question that I wanted just to start with, to kind of bring this out, in us to really talk about cues for connecting and relating, is what do you think makes a good connection or friendship? What comes up for you when you think this is what friendship looks like?
Well, let's begin with relating.
Okay.
You have to find common ground. You have to find something that you're both interested in or you've both experienced. For us, we both have a sales background. And, we talked about, our career in sales and how it was going. And we met at a networking event. And then we delved a little deeper into, beyond the common ground, what are we both interested in? And, we've pursued this friendship relationship for going on 4 years now. And it's been met as equals. And that's what you need to do. Find common ground, find common interests, and meet each other as equals.
I would also add to that, and I hinted to this in the monologue, is we have some shared values. You value consistency. You value integrity. You value honoring your word. These are all three things that I value. When someone starts to do those things, like when it shows up in action, I'm like, friend.
That's right.
Identify with you. I'm going to do this. Not only do I value you for doing that, I want to give it back to you.
Absolutely.
And it creates longevity and experience and friendship where you're like, now I can trust this person. Because we have things that we value.
Don't ask where we're going. Just ask, are you going to drive? Am I going to drive? Are we going to take your car? Are we going to take my car? That's all you need. You just work out the logistics. But you're already committed to the process. So commit to the process and work out the logistics.
Sounds good. So John used this term, relational malnourished. And it really is, I even saying it right now, just struck a chord. What comes up for you when I say that? Like, what is relational malnourished? What do you think it means?
Relational malnourishment is kind of like eating empty calories, like a double cheeseburger. It'll satisfy your hunger, but is it really feeding your body? Are you getting the right type of nutrients from it? And it's kind of like being in a hollow relationship or a transactional relationship, where you're just there in order to get the get, or you're just there because, in spite of everything else, it's just easier to be in that state. It's just easier to go get a double cheeseburger and fries and a shake than actually go out, and get some lean protein and, get proper hydration. No, you're going to get a double-double.
I obviously can relate to that because you've heard me on the show talk about feel-good relating as opposed to fast food relating. Feel-good is not positive, all about positive. It's just meaningful, like it's energy-giving. And then fast food is kind of what George just described, that, it's kind of grab and go, doesn't fill you up. I would disagree on one point that it's easier. It feels like it's easier in the moment, but what sometimes happens because you went there is not. So, and I'll just use fast food as an example. It's like There's a difference between eating a meal at Taco Bell than eating like a really good, healthy, prepared with good ingredients kind of meal. One continues to give you energy. One you burn out faster, and you're like, oh, I'm paying for that fast food that I ate. So I believe that fast food relating. There's an experience when people are showing up, and I'm if you haven't figured this out, very relational and not transactional. So when I feel transactional relating coming towards me, it's like, oh, I'm going to pay for that. It might be like just a fast interaction for the other person, and I get that. But for me, somehow I'll end up paying for it.
Exactly.
Like I'm giving energy away to something that's like they want something from me in the moment, and then if I don't give it, they're going to be mad at me, and then there's like some cleanup gossiping that it needs. That's an investment I don't want to go there.
We live in the perfect town to talk about this, energy levels.
Yeah.
So you eat food to sustain yourself and keep your energy level high. Same reason why we're both in sales. So we interact with quality people. And quality lead to quality agreements.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want quality of agreement. And then once you have a quality of agreement, the outcome is guaranteed. So you just have to go through the process.
And I would just say, I hear what you're saying. I just say it's energy giving too. It's like if there's a choice between a person that I know that just, there's just not a lot of energy exchanging. They're in a different place. It's more about the activity. Let's go drink, let's rage, than it is about the connection and seeing where we are. Like for me, if it's that transactional and activity driven, I would rather be alone because I know that in my alone I can cycle energy.
Exactly.
I know what I need to do to be nourished, and go back and continue to do the things I want to do and interact with the people that I want to interact. So I'll make the choice in that situation to be to go it alone.
And the true sign of growth is recognizing, nutrition. Mm-hmm. If a relationship or if a potential person that's coming into your life is going to be bad for you.
It's really easy to do. I can't remember when I remember getting the lesson. I think that was like late 20s, maybe early 30s. There's an energy check that you can do, and we've talked a lot about being fully in your body. People give off energy. It's like magnets. Like, we either kind of want to connect or we don't, and there's something there, and there's physically something that's happening when you encounter somebody. And if you pay attention to that, you know what the decision is. So, and I look at it as just like, look, does this interaction, is it giving me life-affirming energy? Do I feel good after I leave? Or do I feel like a vampire just sucked on my neck, Like, there might be some in between, but there's usually a clear sign of like, you know what? I feel drained after interacting with this person.
Exactly.
Or I feel really inspired after interacting with this person. And if it's somewhere in the middle, then it takes more experience, more things, encounters to kind of figure out where it is, and then you know what to do.
Yeah, it's kind of, do you want to broach the subject now? We talk about dating.
We can. We're going to get there.
Okay.
But go for it. Yeah.
It's the same like when you part. If you have energy after the date, it was a good date.
Right.
All right. If you have no energy after the date, then guess what, fellas? It was a bad date.
Yeah. But to be fair, and I remember John saying this too, and I've really reflected on his show for some reason. But to be fair, like if we're not understanding that this thing is communicating at all times and knowing, and being responsible for like the energy in you and knowing what that means. To be fair, like somebody had a bad day where they shut all that down, and so you walk away and you go, I'm not feeling it. I didn't feel it. So therefore, that person is a vampire, and I don't want to see him again. I think to be fair, because there are a lot of things pulling our attention and our energies, and like where we feel like we need to protect or whatever. To be fair, I'd like to give people a couple chances. Like I think 3 or 4 chances to like go, okay, this is right. I think the problem with dating and both the online dating and just the one date is we like go, oh, that wasn't the magic unicorn experience, and we disconnect after that first time.
No, or the whole like bachelor language. I didn't feel the spark.
Yeah, the spark.
Yeah.
And you can't, again, reasons why people kind of shut down, or like that something might have been triggered in that interaction or what happened before them, because let's not forget how important the sequence of our relating plays into that experience. Like she could have had a really bad experience coming into it where it's like, I'm kind of not available for this date right now, But when we know that and go, oh, why am I not available? Why do I have kind of a weird pain right now? And like are able to express it, I think that's, that's where we need to be.
That's right. And then all you got to do is you were present, you were there.
You got the shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know why I said Georgia and I went to Politicon together, and my shirt, I forget, mine says free speech, free press, free t-shirt, free t-shirt.
Yes,
so
that's right.
We literally went to the event and got
we
the
got
shirt.
free t-shirts.
we got the
right.
shirt
And coffee.
That's really
right.
good
we
coffee.
Killed it.
All right, so this is a good segue coming off that experience. So we talked about what does it mean to be relationally malnourished. What does relational joy mean to you? What does that sound like? What comes up for you?
Relational joy is being able to tell a really positive story after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're both telling the same story.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find yourselves, both telling the same story after a shared experience, then that was a genuinely shared experience.
Yes. All right. So George and I didn't rehearse this, but there's so many nuggets in what you just said, and I don't even know if you're aware of it. So telling of something, of an experience that happened, because you're excited about it, because, we only talk about two things, really shitty experiences, that's when we yelp the restaurant, this sucks, really, really bad or really, really good. The in-betweens, we don't talk about those enough. So the fact that you're telling it, it was a really good experience. And that it's energy giving,
Yeah,
right?
it is, yeah.
And then the second thing that was really cool about what you just said is the additional experience of connection. So when you hear somebody else recap that same experience, and that you both experienced it with the same lens, and it wow, we were there together.
Exactly.
There was connection in
Mm-hmm.
that. You weren't in the same room and had a totally different experience than what I had. That wouldn't validate your good experience.
Yeah,
but
and the cues are always we went to this, or I was with this person.
yeah.
And those are genuine cues that not only do you value this person's company, you value that they were there with you.
Absolutely.
And they'll vouch for you in the story, and then the story becomes the story, and the situation has a life of its own. And then you keep going back to that, and that's when you're on the precipice of a very long mutual relationship.
And not only that, the other thing that brings me relational joy, and just what you're saying, is a story is what binds. When you can be in the presence of somebody that's telling a good story, and they're telling the details of it, and they're showing enthusiasm, or showing how they felt when they were experiencing this, we connect. We as humans connect over that story, as opposed to just the facts, ma'am, and you list what happened. There's not number one, it's harder to grasp that and remember when we're just listing numbers or just the facts. But when we start to tell a story, we tell emotion, and we show emotion. We go back and kind of describe something that's happened. So story is life-giving connection.
Well, story is the result of relating, because everyone has shared an experience. Sebastian Junger has this book called Tribe, where there's a chapter in it where the survivors of the violence in Serbia and Croatia felt that it was better to live during that crisis than it is now, because people took care of each other. People valued each other. And now, since the end of the war in the former Yugoslavia, things have returned to normal, but they've returned to this selfish normal. So you either have a crisis, as you have with Harvey, or you have a selfish normal. And the whole purpose of your task here with the podcast and with PSC is to diffuse the selfish normal.
Wow. That just kind of landed some weird diffuse the selfish normal. Yeah, I think that is. I mean, I often thank you for that.
Yeah.
Actually, thank you for that. I often feel that my task and my role is how I often define it is just showing people that it's possible to feel something other than me, and how much more rewarding it is. But that is, by definition, what you just said.
Yeah.
I define it in a different way. I say it in a different way, but that actually is. And I'm not doing it because it's look at me and this concept. I think it's the right thing to do. I truly believe that we deserve to feel better about, like, you know, it's not just the right thing to do, it's the thing that is life-giving.
Yeah.
You know, it's good for you. You know, it's not like, I don't benefit in any way by promoting this.
I mean, this is kind of like the ultra-masculine way of getting into, you know, relating and expressing our feelings, because no man wants the feeling of being alone. I mean, it is literally the most frightening thing a man can experience, when you are all alone and you have no one to call, no one's going to back you up, no one's there, you know, to spot you. You know, and that sense of fear is something that we try to get away from, and that's why some men are incredibly invested in material wealth, because for them that's their safety net. Or some men are completely dedicated to their families, because to them that is like their emotional residence. And the feeling of being alone is the selfish normal that we can't live with.
So I would elaborate on that. I think nobody wants to be alone. I don't think that's necessarily a masculine trait or a female trait. I think possibly if we look at some of the framework that John gave us in masculine, feminine energy, I think that the man doesn't want to be without resources, and people are resources. So that's, you know, that's what it is for him. What being alone is like you might want to be alone by yourself for an hour or even a vacation. Like I love that. I'm into that.
Being alone by your choice,
but not knowing that knowing you have no resources is a whole different kind of alone. And I think for a female, or just someone that leans into more of the feminine traits of this equation, it's being without love. Alone is being without love. Like, and I would go even further, and maybe this is me, so I might be projecting a little bit, but for me, what that means is knowing love is not just like something I can get, it's a state. And in order for that state to happen, I have to be seen and heard. Like, I have to know that people like love and accept me for who I am. I have to know that it exists somewhere. Like, I don't have to, if I have to explain to you who I am, and you don't accept the state of who I am, that feels like the absence of love.
Yeah.
So I think there's a different, I mean, nobody wants to be alone.
Unless it's of your own choosing. You know, aesthetically you choose.
And for like a day, an hour, a month or something. But, you know. To
allow the creative process to flow, but there's always something you can go back to.
Yeah.
You know, so you start at zero, and this is the drive. Like, men have this internal drive to succeed, and that drive is fueled by not being alone. You know, either we want the recognition of our peers, or we want to be among peers. You know, but we don't want to be alone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, what do you think for you? Let's start from, we'll just share personally, and then we'll take the concepts of society and culture. Right. But what for you drains your relational joy? What's just a drain of that, takes away from it?
Well, being that I'm divorced, I think what it was the lack of connection, or the lack of like seeking connection. We got to the point where the only thing that would bind us together was our son, you know, and we were all in on, you know, being good parents. Literally, was that enough to sustain the marriage? And now that we're no longer married and we're divorced, you know, we still have our son, so we still have our roles to play in this young man's future. But that was the drain, was that there was nothing replenishing the energy. You know, I mean, there was enough there to sustain you. You know, like the husk and gruel of the rice. You know, it'll keep you alive, but you're not gonna outperform champion athletes on that.
Yeah.
And when you're in a relationship, you need to perform like a champion athlete, because you got to be all in.
Which sometimes means fighting for it, right?
Yeah, there's got to be.
Like, if you stop fighting.
Yeah, there's got to be something worth fighting for.
Yeah.
And there's got to be some fight in the game. You know, it's like fighting is a healthy sign of a relationship. That means that both people are invested in it.
I think back to Harville Hendrix and Getting the Love That You Want, which is the book that I recommend more than any other book, and not just for personal reasons, even for business, because there's a lot of like relational knowledge in there that just will help you. And if we can't relate, we don't do our jobs well. We don't do life well if we can't relate. But I like what he says about this particular thing about, you know, he was a therapist for couples, you know, before he started his own type of therapy called Imago. And he said, you know what, there is no unique reason why two couples come in. You know, it's not, they're so special that like they had this huge problem, you know, over money or, you know, how differences of opinion and child rearing. There's nothing unique about it. What is common in every couple that ends up in therapy is they've fallen out of relating with each other. They didn't know how to communicate. They didn't know how to have a healthy debate or conversation or argument. You know, they had no guidelines for those things. So like that's why people end up there. It's like they don't know, and things are going to get hard. You know, I always think of it as like, how can they not? Like, you have separate mind, heart experiences. You have, like, we've known each other for 4 or 5 years now, and I'm positive there's still things I don't know about you, and likewise. I don't know all your triggers. You don't know all of mine. Like, so, you know, and then you put two people that, like, don't know all that in a close, you know, confined space where they're coming up on each other's like triggers and stuff. And if you don't have some sort of framework to go, okay, let's talk about this. Like, hey, what just happened over there, that's not really about you or I. Yeah. That's like something that bothers me because of this thing that happened in my past or whatever, and let's take time to talk about it. But if you're not even willing to do that, you're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, in most relationships, whether, you know, you're in a relationship or you're married or you're cohabitating, that other person becomes the only other adult you interact with, like within, you know, a 2 feet, you know, space. Yeah. You know, social media doesn't count, Instagram doesn't count. It's like the human being that's in front of you. Yeah. And the most intimate thing you can do is share a meal together. Yeah. And one of the warning signs for me was when we were no longer eating together. Yeah. Then that's when you knew, hey, something was up.
It's not happening.
It's not happening.
It's not happening. So, did you answer it? No, I don't know what your answer is. So what drains relational joy is?
The lack of connection.
Lack of connection. Okay, I'm trying to think I mean, obviously that would be an equation in mind to, in lack of connection, so I would go further because I'm a process person. Like, I like, you know, having a system for things, but when there is lack of connection and nobody's trying to find a way back, like, that's so draining to me. Like, it's like, I mean, you know, I like having the willingness to do it, like to acknowledge that there's lack of connection, and then not having somebody reciprocate the willingness to go, like, well, how do we get back to that? That's really draining. Yeah. You know, really draining. Or not, and I think what a new thing, because of like all the distractions and social media and the phone and just like constant go, and like constantly like, oh, I've got to consume new stuff. I got to get the new Apple phone. You know, like, there's so many distractions that take us out of relating. Like, I think that the one easy thing that everybody can do if this is important to you and feeling connected is important to you is like really find a way to have check-ins. Like, and by the way, a check-in is like calling a friend and saying, you know what, I just don't even know what's going on in your life anymore, and like, let's have dinner and let's just talk, you know. And it's not, a check-in is not is not focused on the activity. So it's not like, hey, let's go drink or party, or like, you know, let's go to this thing, because the thing is more important than the connection. And I said that in a very derogatory way, and I'm sorry, because sometimes the thing is cool too. Like, you need the thing, but that's not nourishment. Yeah. Sometimes that's just like the distraction or whatever. And you know, how often, I ask everybody, think about this, like, how often have you gone to something because the thing was the activity that drew you, but you were also hoping to reconnect with a friend? Like, you were like, oh, I haven't seen her in a long time, or I haven't seen him in a long time, and like, cool, I'm excited about this, and it never happened because the thing was bigger than the friendship.
Oftentimes the thing becomes a distraction from the relationship. If you're in a relationship, all right, everyone listen real good. If you're in a relationship and you do a series of activities, and the relationship is primarily the attendance of those activities rather than the conversation prior to getting to the activity or the conversation after the activity, then you're just going through the motions. Yeah. You know, and it's not you enjoy each other's companies, it's just that you enjoy how you perform during the activity.
I just got triggered in what he said, and I'm just going to go there and share this, and it's going to get a little personal, but I remember, so, you know, early 20s is when, like, you're going out and you're raging, and you're like, you drink all night, it's cool, and you know, you're like, you wear those badges, like, I did it, and I can still go to work and all that. And And, you know, I like that. You know, like there's a part of me like that likes that. But I really remember really getting uncomfortable with that. And I couldn't put my finger on it until I got a little bit older. And the discomfort was having the experience of being out with a friend and they're friends with you until a shiny object presents itself and they're gone, and then you're left. Like, you know, there's those awkward moments where you're by yourself at this really cool party or at a club, and like your friend has just totally like left you and doesn't give a, you know, doesn't even care, like, you know, what's going on with you, or like there is no check-in, there is no us now. It's like, I'm over here doing this thing. And I remember so many of those that I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this type of interaction. Like I really would feel really bad, and I actually felt kind of weird that nobody else cared about it like I cared about it. It's like, you know, am I being too needy? You know, maybe this is why I put masculine energy over feminine, because I didn't like how I felt wanting to feel so much connection and going out, you know, expecting that, but it was the activity that overplayed the connection. You know, now in my mature womanhood, like now I just know, you know, I kind of have an understanding between different friends and people, like where they are on that equation. Like if it's activity driven, transactional driven, relational, and I just make choices about where that is and where I am and how much energy I have to give.
Exactly.
I'm willing to give, you know, and just not do some of those things, because it's not a life affirming to be running around raging in a me, you know, party all the time. For me, that doesn't work for me.
Well, I mean, even Charles Bukowski talks about this. You know, there's a certain point in your life where you just recognize exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And for Charles Bukowski, it's like, I'm in a bar and I'm going to drink with the purpose of getting drunk.
Yeah.
All right? And he was very open about it, you know, and it's that moment of recognition when you realize that you have gained enough experience where you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what you really want, is that you want to relate to someone that can actually tell the difference.
Well, and I also think in that recognition is like a lot of self-love is being developed. It's like, okay, I understand now what my needs are, and I'm willing to meet them on my own. Like I'm willing to like love myself, to go, you know what, it's cool. Like that's not your thing. Like don't try to make it your thing. It's not working. You don't feel good afterwards, so don't make it your thing. You know, make your thing your thing. You know,
make your thing and own it.
And pursue that and
own it.
And then it's cool. So. Yeah, I mean, self-love for like there's all kinds of things in that mix of understanding who you are and what you need, and be willing to give it to yourself before you go around asking it for others.
In two breaths, I quoted Charles Bukowski and RuPaul. If you don't love yourself, how are you going to be able to love anyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, well, let's get to, we can't talk about modern connection and cues for connection and, you know, where it might be there and where it might be not. And I'm hoping, like, I've loved this conversation so far, and I'm hoping people can listen and go, you know, when they're like having this encounter with someone else and going, hey, it's not working, like, you know, number one, identify your own role in it, and two, like, maybe think about like the decisions that they're making in terms of relating and how it might differ from you. And if you really want to know what's going on, you know, why they don't come to this event that you ask them to go to all the time, or, you know, whatever it is, if you really want to know what's going on, ask them and ask why, you know, like ask them why they're not coming. I bet you they'll know, you know, especially if they're a little more mature like we are. But yeah, it's there, you know, ask. And the ask is the connection, you know, you know, why is, you know, what's going on with you, and why is that? You know, why is that important to you, and why is this not important to you?
And these are totally valid questions to ask if you're in a business relationship, if you're in a romantic relationship. Like, ask the questions, because, I mean, so I'm going to get very gender specific. Men are always accused of not saying the things we need to say. Well, we don't know what it is you want us to say because we haven't been asked the question.
So we can give you some cues to have these conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, someone might not want the question to be asked too, in fairness, because I'm going to take on my feminine traits and defend that.
Yeah.
That, you know, we might be asking too many questions, and they feel that. So there's a balance of that. But I think maybe where we can kind of agree on this is, you know, don't assume. You know, just you know, that there's that fun saying about assumption.
That's right, and it's very true.
It's very true.
Very true.
Ask, and you and me, see, if you spell it assume, you probably heard it, so I'm not going to tell everybody. But it does. Like, if we
Google.
assume, it makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah, Google it.
Google it.
It's
yeah.
true.
It's true. It's true. So don't assume. And if you care enough, don't assume.
Yeah.
You know, reach out and talk, and there's value in that. And by the way, that's the life affirming connection energy that we're talking about. Like, if we take the time to slow down and go, what's going on with you?
I mean, I'll say this in my 20s. You know, when I wouldn't see a friend in a long time, say, hey, man, how are you, man? How's your mom? I don't ask about their moms anymore. I'm like, hey, man, how are you? How's your girl? You know, you guys doing all right?
Yeah.
I want to know how his relationship is.
Yeah.
Because I got to take the temperature of how his most valuable relationship is.
Yeah.
Will tell me how good in a state of mind he's in.
Yeah.
And if he's telling me about these problems and all this drama, then I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll check in with you later. I know that he is fighting an internal struggle right now that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
You know.
That's good. I mean, I like the idea of thinking, like, if you want to know where people stand, first of all, ask them who the most important people are in their life, and then where are they in those relationships, and that will give you kind of a check-in. And hopefully you're on that list.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting to the point. We've got to talk about online dating. If we're going to talk about modern connection and relating, we've got to talk about the tech.
Yeah.
And online dating is kind of the thing. So have you used websites and apps to date? I know you're kind of dating. I know you're busy, but like you're kind of trying.
It's so we have all these inputs.
Yeah.
And we have all these outputs.
Yeah.
And the one thing we don't have is time.
Yeah.
But
the question is, are you using them? Like, first of all,
I've used them all.
Okay,
and
that's what I want.
You want me to grade them?
No, I mean, which ones are you still currently using?
Well, right now I'm out.
You're out.
Like, I'm out.
Okay.
I'm out. 2 a.m. at the casino.
Okay.
Right. But I can tell you there's differences between the services.
Yeah.
And all services have this one thing in common.
Mm-hmm.
The more you invest in it, like, actually take a picture that you didn't take yourself. Mm-hmm. Find some friends, take a picture of you.
I get on him about this.
Yeah, she gets on me about this.
Stop. He takes more selfies than most guys I know. I'm just going to let you do.
I do take
most girls I know.
I've
way
stopped.
more than me.
I've stopped. I've stopped. But the reason I take a lot of selfies is usually I'm at events alone. Usually, like, if I'm not there with you as your plus one, I'm like there like Lone Ranger style. All right, there's no Tonto there.
You got to teach your son how to use your phone, take pictures. I want to see some Charlie pictures of Dad. That would be awesome.
Well, he does. He knows how to do Google directions already. So that's what we'll work on.
He's your wingman.
Yeah, that's what.
Wingman.
He is at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
He is at Whole Foods.
Anyway,
so a friend of mine, he got on this one service 2 weeks ago.
Just say the name of it.
No, I'm not going to say his name.
No, not him. The name of the service.
Oh, I can say the name of the service?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. It was OkCupid.
OkCupid.
He didn't invest any time in it. He had a really bad photograph. He didn't answer any of the questions. And I'm like, bro, you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
All right, here, let me show you. And I set up my profile right then and there, like in his presence, and by the end of the day, I had a date.
Uh-huh.
All right, and then I had, a sequence of dates, and then I came back to him a week later. It's this is how you do it.
Yeah.
It's like an exercise plan. You don't see results unless you invest the time and energy in it.
So what I'm also hearing, though, you have to invest in a little process to make these
you have to
things
invest
work.
in the process.
Okay, so
it doesn't just happen.
Let's talk about this investment thing, because I know we've sort of already talked about this, and we disagree a little bit. So do you consider, in terms of like everything that you can do to date, do you consider using these websites and apps, online dating apps, as a high investment or a low investment?
It's a low investment in terms of monetary cost, because rarely are men ever placed in the position where they have to pay for a service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know that's not true about women, because there are these services like The League or Inner Circle where you have to like pay to actually see your respondents.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is a very high investment, because you have to show up. You have to be present. It's still an old-fashioned kind of date. It's like, hey, I'll meet you here, or I'll pick you up, or like, we're going to go here, we're going to do this. And in the end, like what John Weiland said, it's what women want. They want structure.
Yeah.
Because no woman wants to be in a car with a guy, and then the guy turns over to the woman and says, what do you want to do? Immediately,
it's true.
Boom. Like, how quickly can I get out of here?
Just have a plan. Once in a while, just a plan.
Just be a man
Yeah.
with a plan.
Own up a plan.
Be a man
And
with a plan.
what he also said, just to reiterate, so like we're not off the hook. We, feminine energy now, I'll take that role. We're not off the hook on what we bring. Is he said, show up with a plan. It's the framework for her to give energy.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, yay, you know, excited. Like she can give feedback and like go, yeah, I'm excited about that. Now that I'm comfortable with the foundation, I'll bring my energy.
Yeah.
I'll make this fun. I'll be flirty. Whatever. But
Yeah.
that's in general what's going on. That's
Yeah.
the exchange. You know, come up with a plan. We'll feel comfortable, and then we'll meet you with energy, and whatever
That's right.
that energy is.
That's absolutely right. And you could gauge the success. You can gauge the success of your online date. You know, whether it started on Tinder, Bumble, you know, OkCupid, The League, Inner Circle. I'm going to see how many I can name.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like a drinking game.
Yeah, it is a drinking game. We should invent it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a plan, you're not going to have a second date.
Yeah.
Right now, I'll say it.
I agree with that. So so I'm going to back up. So the question I asked him is a high investment, low investment, and he said, you know, high in some ways you got to have a process, low financially. You know, so if you don't invest some time and energy in how you're approaching it, like you're not going to have any results. I also would like to put out, it's, you know, how you answer this question depends on what you value. So we didn't talk about well-being in that. Like, so for me, it was a tremendous high investment because of time. You know, you think it's like really fast and stuff, but it ends up taking more time to kind of, you know, have it to weed out people. Really, that's more what the system is. It's not about weeding them in. But the unpleasant interactions and exchanges that are very transactional. So I'm a relational person. This is a very transactional process that's not ever really going to work well for someone like me. But the investment of my well-being in terms of like, well, is this person going to respond? They said, hey, I'm going to call you tonight. I'm like actually set time aside to take the phone call because I want to show up for connection. So I don't want to be like multitasking and watching TV. Like, yeah, you know, call me at a certain time. I'll be available for you. Again, framework, I'll provide the energy. And then that wouldn't happen. Then I'm like, oh, all guys are blah, and you know, or this app sucks or whatever. You know, that starts to drain on my well-being.
Yeah.
And my well-being is really important to me.
Yeah.
So it becomes a really high investment that at this point, like you, I'm off. I'm like, I'm done. I don't have that to give. I'm in an output, a heavy output part of my life of doing things that are important to me. And like that is, I don't have the output for that.
There's this, I went to UCLA, so we had John Wooden drilled into our heads, you know, from the first time we arrived.
Yeah.
Failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a plan, if you haven't prepared, then of course you're going to have a bad outcome.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're going to blame the app.
Yeah.
And then it's an unnecessary stressor on your own life.
Yeah.
You've allowed this app to suddenly have power over you.
Totally. And part of the problem too is like I'm super process driven because I'm a guy. I'm like I have masculine energy. I have more guy energy. So like sometimes I think this is where my feminine shell doesn't get perceived in the equation because I'm kind of asking for a little process, and if they're not going to give me that framework, it's like, oh, she's too controlling or whatever, and it's like it just doesn't work for me. And for anybody that's listening going, but I'm on there and this is my hope, and like, you know, this is all I got.
But the thing is, it's like buying those tomato seeds at the supermarket.
Yeah.
You know, you just like open the package, pour, add water, boom.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah. So for me, like to be clear, I want to say it doesn't work for me if people are using things, you know, just find some process, I think, somehow, you know, and
you can
adjust
ask for
that.
process. You have a nugget. You have a golden nugget, which is let's establish the means of communication.
Yeah,
right
if you
away.
don't, yeah, that's a good point. As a female, I think if you're really process driven and a little bit more masculine in traits like me, you can ask the question to see if they're kind of going to meet you with some structure, if that's the thing that you need it to do to make it work. Again, there's still the time thing, but you know, for me, I just think it's like do your thing. Like what I've come to determine is just do my thing. Be where I need to be in terms of events and meet people that
but you
way.
have to
like
own the thing. Like,
yeah,
like let's
yeah. You have to
establish-
commit. It's back to our values from the
exactly.
beginning of the show. You have to commit to some consistency because
Exactly.
there is no difference between someone in your career that's more successful than you, if you guys went to the same school and all that, if you kind of look at it, than persistence. The difference between most people that are successful and unsuccessful is just persistence.
Yeah.
So persistence in in process or adjusting, but just like going at it until it works.
Absolutely.
I think. So.
I mean, there's hundreds of examples
Yeah.
of this, but the best example is something you shared with me a couple of years ago. Is like establish the means of communication, and it's something I ask, the people I get into business relationships with or romantic relationships with. How do you want me to contact
Yeah.
you? Is it easier on the phone? Is it easier over text? Is it easier over email? Do you have a block of time when you're unavailable?
Yeah.
Because I need to respect your time.
And that's the problem, I think, with the systems, and we'll wrap this up right here, is that because it starts in an SMS format, that we assume everybody likes texting as a means for
Exactly.
communication, and it's not true. Like, I do want to hear from someone. I want to hear their voice, and like, I will make the time to meet with you. Like, those things are important. So that's all that I want to say about that.
No, it's time-
On the
it's time
dating.
for a drink.
Yeah, we're running out of time. I wish this is just water, people. But after that conversation, I wish it was something more.
We're evoking the spirit of Barkowski.
Exactly. All right. We're running out of time, but I think we have enough time to do both of the things that we do here
All
on the
right.
show. So, George, you know that I always ask an off-topic question to the guests. And, it's just my way of going, look, there's always more information available. I might learn something about George even in doing this that I didn't know by asking this random question. And then I also like to demonstrate at any given time the way that we're relating can change, okay? So I have the box questions that I've used for almost all the shows, but I got this new book, too, that I think even Seth Godin has a little quote on it, so
Okay.
he endorses it. So do you want a question from the book or the box?
Let's do the book.
You want the book?
Let's break the book.
All right, so, by the way, George is also the reason why I keep a mini constitution present at all times, because you never know when you're going to need that or how it might be relevant to a conversation, so it's always here, too. Isn't that great?
That's great. You know your Fourth Amendment rights.
Yes. All right. Tell me when to stop.
All right, stop.
Okay. Would you want to have your rate of physical aging slowed so much that bearing some accidents you live for 1,000 years?
Oh, this is the Dorian Gray question.
Apparently.
So the Portrait of Dorian Gray is this novel that was written at a time during the height of Victorian era.
Yeah.
Men didn't live that long, So
Are you stalling to answer the question?
I'm answering the question.
All right.
Men didn't live that long during the
Okay.
Victorian era. You check out at 55. Now men can live until like their 70s and 80s. My grandfather lived until he was 94.
Yeah.
My greatest fear is actually living to a very old age. I can't see myself
Yeah.
in this frame withered down to like 94.
Yeah.
So that is actually something you didn't know about me.
Yeah, I did not know that
I
about
have
you.
this like persistent fear of not that I'm going to die,
Yeah.
but that I'd be cursed with an absurdly long life.
Ah. So we know the answer. So no, you would not.
In the novel, I'd smash my own mirror.
You'd smash your own mirror.
In the Portrait of Dorian Gray.
I got it. All right. See, I just learned something about you. Awesome. All right. So one question. You want to ask me one?
Yeah, let's
do it. All right.
Tell me when to stop.
Okay. Stop.
Is there anything in your life too personal to discuss with others? If so, have you ever made the mistake of trying? What happened? It's legit. It's on page 227.
227. Okay. Well, obviously, I had to think about that before I started a show like this about relating, because I knew that I would share personal experiences, and so there's nothing that I wouldn't talk about that just involves me. The one line that I draw is if it's an experience that involves a friend or a family member, and family more particularly, I feel protective over my family. Then they didn't choose to have that public. They didn't choose to have that information out. That's stuff that I wouldn't talk about. It's still part of my story. Their interactions and lots of things that have happened in my family has made me who I am. But I feel like that's not something that I should talk about. That's private. They didn't choose to be on to put
Exactly.
it out publicly. So that's where I draw the line.
The Book of Questions.
The Book of Questions. Isn't that awesome?
The Book of Questions.
So if you take this to
a party.
Yeah. I think what we're going to get to it, what the social challenge will be, but now I have an idea for it because of what we just did.
Absolutely.
All right. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing you get to do, on the show. So we do a heart swell. You've heard people do it many times now. Heart swell is just a dedication to somebody. It could be a group of people, like somebody that you just want to give a shout out and say, I'm thinking about you. You can look right at the camera and say, hey, you mean something to me and here's why?
Oh, I mean, that's easy. When you're
Okay.
a father, you think about your children. So obviously I'm thinking about my son. He's not going to be on Facebook. He's not going to watch this. But
someday you're going to
someday in the archives, you know, he'll find this because our internet lives are immortal.
Absolutely.
So the thing is that I hope for two things. I hope that my son is more successful than I will ever be, and I hope that he will never be ashamed of me.
Aw, that's awesome. I don't think I know 2 will not happen. I don't know about 1, but I know 2 will not happen.
Yeah, well, one will.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, George. I
Absolutely.
can't believe we
Thank
haven't
you.
done this sooner. That was a
Yeah.
good conversation. There's some nuggets in there. I'm just thinking about it right now, like, because you know, people we're all trying to relate, and I think that you know, we didn't have all the right answers, but I think we hit on some good ones in this. So I encourage everybody to share with people that are like, hey, you know, you having problems with your friends? This might be the episode that you need to listen to, friends or family. So I thank you. George's podcast is ResPublicaPodcast.com. I will be sharing that in the archive links. And so George is like perfectly, he doesn't know this, he's perfectly in a Weiland sandwich because we mentioned John. And then his lovely daughter, who John mentioned, is going to be on next week. And she's fantastic. You do not want to miss this episode for sure. She's a very inspiring young lady. So that's what's coming up. And to get to the social challenge. So the social challenge this week is to actually plan to have a conversation with a friend. Reach out and say, hey, buddy, friend, lady, whatever you call them. We haven't talked in a while, and I want to reconnect with you. And, go with some questions in mind. Get this book, have some fun with, some questions that you don't know about your friend, but make the time to sit down with someone over a meal for 40 minutes and just say, I want to reconnect. I want to know where you are. That's the social challenge. That's the end of the show. I will see you next week. And as always, relate with more curiosity.
Yes. And be authentic.
Be authentic.
And show up.
And show up.
Show up.
And drive the car.
Drive the car, be on time.
So many things. See you later.
You're listening to Relatable with Stephanie Michelle, only on LA Talk Radio.